All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. I'm a little under the weather this week, so if the voice sounds a bit scratchy, that's the explanation. I figured it was better to hop on a little bit late as opposed to never. So here we are. We're going to do the best we can this week. Topics we're going to cover this week. I get a lot of questions about my late season gear lists, and I realized I haven't gone over one of those in quite some time. So I did 2 late season hunts this year. I did a kind of truck-based mule deer hunt, and then I did just a hotel show 2-day whitetail archery hunt in December. And I think taking a look at both of those gear lists could be a little bit interesting because I think they both highlight different elements of my late season apparel kind of program. And then also I did some broadhead testing while I was on the whitetail hunt. So I'm going to share the details of that. I posted a video of that. So if you'd rather actually see the whole sizes and the damage done, I actually hung the deer up in my garage and kind of got some close-up footage of everything. So it might be a little bit more beneficial to go look at that. But for those of you who are just pure audio folks, I'm going to go over it here. Also, a little bit of housekeeping. So just finished giving away a ton of stuff on Mindful Reviews. So the winner was picked for the Prime RVX 34. Josiah won that. And then for my lifetime members on Mindful Reviews, Josh won a Crazy Creek Hex 2.0 long back chair, and Curtis won a MTN SS carbon fiber tripod. And the prize for next month is a Yeti M15 soft-sided cooler. Also, I've announced my next major giveaway for Mindful Reviews, so anybody who joins Mindful Reviews between now and April 1st will be automatically entered to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. So, pretty big deal. I don't know what those are, like 1,600 US, close to 2,400 Canadian dollars. So, big ass prize. I'm going to be trying to do one of those, like the bigger style giveaways for to incentivize joining Mindful Reviews, maybe 3-4 times a year. So just did the Prime Bow. Now we're doing the Sig Sauer Zulu 10 binos. So yeah, anyone who joins between now and April 1st is automatically entered to win. Other than that, yeah, I mean, holidays were great. We don't need to like dive into a big, explanation of all that, but holidays are over. It's time to get back to work. So lots of reviews have been going up, and let's dive into these gear lists. So let's start with the late season mule deer list first. So I'm just going to adjust my screen here a little bit so I can see a little bit better. Actually, a weird thing happened to me. So I was on my way into this unit, and super remote, nobody around anywhere, and then this white truck with a bunch of dog boxes in the back, like, he's running cougars, cats of some kind, because, there's like 5 or 6 dogs barking, big metal dog boxes. So I'm like, okay, sweet, somebody kind of local. We start chatting up. I tell him what I'm there for, and it turns out he's the outfitter in the area. And the area, my plan was to do like a truck TP, stove, hot tent type setup. And turns out the area I want to camp is like 300 meters from where his outfitter cabin is. Dude was super awesome. And he's like, you know what? Just use my cabin for the week. It's all good. There's some chopped up firewood there. And it was incredible. It was like having a full blown vacation. So super grateful to that guy for the hospitality. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to break down what my plan was to take, because I have actually took all this stuff on a similar hunt before. So you'll get an idea of how I pack for one of these, truck-based hot tent style hunts, but just recognize I didn't actually have to sleep in the teepee. I was able to sleep in a kick-ass cabin every night. So yeah, starting up, we got our pack, as always, XO K4 7200 with a lid, bringing it to 7,800 cubic inches total. That's my go-to pack. I had a bit of a revelation with this pack the other day. So I do all my training hikes with an Outdoorsman's Atlas trainer on the Outdoorsman's long-range hunter frame. Been doing that for years. And to be honest, it sucks. That frame is not good. I love the guys at Outdoorsman's, but I got to be brutally honest. Their products are lagging behind, man. Their pack is not good. I could rip into it in a whole bunch of ways, and I'm not going to, but I do not recommend anybody buy that pack. And so it'd been kind of bothering me. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to rig up. I've got 2 EXO packs. I'm going to rig up one of them with a 45-pound plate. And by kind of using the meat shelf and taking off the pack and then using all the straps to kind of cinch in this 45-pound plate, it actually worked great. And putting on the EXO with 45 pounds compared to the Outdoorsman's with 45 pounds, dude, it feels like it weighs, I know it sounds crazy, but it feels like it weighs half as much. Like the suspension system is so good on that pack. And listen, I think this is more a function of the Outdoorsman's suspension system just being trash than it is the EXO being fantastic. I think if I'd have put it in a Stone Glacier or a Kafaru or any other of the similar caliber of pack, I would have had a similar experience. But anyways, as soon as I loaded up the EXO pack, it was just a way more pleasurable experience. So I guess the takeaway from that is that if you're using a subpar training pack, I would, if you've got the funds or you don't mind a little extra wear and tear on your main pack, I would seriously consider switching over to your main pack because, yeah, it's just a much better experience. Now for shelter, I was going to take the Seek Outside 12-man teepee. Inside, I had a big Cabela's cot for a sleeping bag. I was taking that Argali prototype to continue doing some testing on that. And then might as well bring a real pillow with me. Now, when I use a cot, I still bring a sleeping pad. So I had the XPED 7R Ultra. The stove was the Seek Outside XL stove. And I bring 2 cases of fire logs. So I don't like screwing around with, cutting up a bunch of little wood. I don't mind when I have time, but it was only a 3 or 4 day hunt. I had lots of room in the truck. I didn't have to hike in anywhere. And the fire logs work phenomenally well in these titanium stoves. So I had 2 cases of fire logs. I brought a 7x9 tarp just in case. I had my cell booster with me, and I had a couple camp chairs. I also brought my Ego battery station. So I'm on the fence whether or not I should do a review on this thing. And for anybody who's listening, if you want to know about my kind of off-grid power solution when I'm in the truck, let me know. Basically, this company sent me this thing to test. They're really good guys. They're like, we don't even care if you cover it. We just want you to use it and let us know what your experience with it is. And I thought that was super rad. Basically, it's heavy. It's like a big square, 2 feet by 2.5 feet, like a rectangular cube. And it fits all these battery packs, big battery packs, like 10,000 milliamp hour battery packs. And they have all these power tools. They can go in chainsaws and hedge trimmers and big lights, and it's a whole ecosystem. But you can use this cube to charge all the battery packs, but then you can also use it as like a power station to plug everything into. So when I go on a big truck hunt, I normally just throw the whole thing in the back. And I do have kind of smaller little power stations that can be attached to just singular batteries if I don't want to take the whole thing. And it works really well. It's like having plug-in power, like generator power, without having to worry about starting a generator. Now, obviously, it doesn't have the same voltage and amperage, but you can run your lights, you can charge everything, you can run your laptop, you can do all kinds of stuff. And when you bring 4 10,000 milliamp hour, they're not 10,000 milliamp hour. They're, what would be the next? It's not 100,000 milliamps. It's like and it's not kilowatts. I'd have to go look at it, but these things are bricks. It's like 10 times 10,000. Yeah, so it's not 10,000 milliamps, which would actually just be 1 amp, I guess. These are 10 amp hour batteries. So yeah, it's 10 times the power of a 10,000 milliamp hour battery. Yeah, here we go. It's a ARC lithium design battery, charges in 60 minutes. Capacity is 560 watt hours, and they weigh 7.7 pounds each. So yeah, like they are not meant for the backcountry at all. But for this truck style camping, they're fantastic, man. And I have a battery operated chainsaw that I keep with me as well, and I can put it on my quad. I can take it in my truck. Yeah, it's a really great little ecosystem that they've got. So now let's dive into the apparel, because I think that's a little bit more interesting, hence because I didn't really use any of that stuff I just listed on this particular hunt. So temperatures were cold. I want to say I was hunting in an average of like -8 to -12 with some decent wind. Like it was cold. I ran the Stone Glacier Avro for my base layer, and then I ran the ambient hoodie over top of that. So what I actually did for this hunt, and I do this on some other late season hunts, I don't run a thin base layer like an Avro or a Core Lightweight. I actually run the Sitka Core Heavyweight Grid Fleece hoodie as my base layer. So that's what I walked around in most of the time. And then over top of that, I had the option to put my ambient hoodie if I needed it, and then a Stone Glacier Groom and Puffy if I needed even more. And then I also had my Stone Glacier M5 rain jacket to kind of complete and lock in that kind of upper body system. Now I was testing a new pair of boxers, which you're going to have to stay tuned for. I think some very interesting news coming in the next kind of few weeks. Now for pants, I wore the Stone Glacier de Havilland Light, and underneath those, I had the Sitka Lightweight Long Johns. That was a really nice combo. The Sitka Core Lightweight Long Johns are really light, so they don't create a bunch of bulk underneath your system, and so they fit under there really well. I was warm, but I didn't get too hot, so really great system for the bottom. Now for my hat, I was also testing out a new cap option. You're gonna have to also wait for news of that. Now for boots, I had on Mindel just sent me some new boots, and they were called, let me just type this in. Yeah, they're called the Mindel Air Revolution Alpine Pro 200 gram. I will do a big review on these later. I'm 50-50 on them, to be completely honest with you. Super comfortable, but the sizing is just way out of whack. It's like a full size out. Like I ordered a 14 and they're like a size 15. And they say something about that on their website, and I talked with one of the guys about it, and they're like, yeah, well, if you normally wear this, you order this instead. I'm like, I don't understand why companies do this. Like, why do you do something that's so drastically different than expected and then assume like it's the customer's responsibility, then adapt to like your poor design? It's almost like it's like a mistake was made in production, and instead of remaking, the original lasts, they just cranked out a bunch of these boots that are the wrong size. Now, that being said, the reason I'm 50-50 on them is that I really liked wearing them. It's just that it's a complicated sizing. Okay, moving on from that, I wore a pair of Mindel socks. Had two different pairs I was testing out. They've got like a hunter and a more lightweight pair. The merino socks that are on the Mindel site are phenomenal. I fell in love with those things. I'll do a review on those shortly as well. Didn't have to wear a belt because the de Havilland lights come with a belt. I was wearing an updated version of the Ape Equipment Gators. Love those things. Had my Garmin Fenix 7X solar watch. I'm trying to think what else. Did not take puffy pants. I took a pair of Dew Point rain pants. For gloves, I basically had two systems I was using. I had the mechanics gloves, which are like a phenomenal $20 option. And then I had the Sitka Blizzard mitts. And then depending on kind of how cold it was and what was going on, I would go back and forth between those two systems. Now, the other pair of gloves I had were a pair of merino liners from Mech. They're $20. They're phenomenal. I got to do a whole glove video here soon. I really like these gloves. The problem is they don't last. You really only get one season out of them. And then the webbing starts to let go and the fingertips start to let go. But for $20, I don't care. I buy a new pair every season and I just ride them until the wheels fall off. Yeah, gloves. The mechanics gloves, the Sitka Blizzard mitts, and the Mech merino liners. Excellent kind of complete glove system. Now for a toque, like a beanie, I had the Sitka Jetstream beanie. Love that thing. I just wish there was like more covering over the ears because I like to wear it on top of a ball cap. Now for optics, this was pre-review for the new Zulu 6 HDX Pro, and that review has been released now. So if you want a detailed kind of analysis of those binoculars, that's on my YouTube channel. But I was running the SIG Zulu 6 HDX Pro 16 powers, a Swaro ATX 85. I was carrying the binos in a marsupial large case. That is the only real problem with sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. The HDX Pros are very large, so you're going to need a large bino case. And I think especially for archery hunts, that could start to get a little annoying. So just a side note there. But I love those things. And the low light performance improvements in the HDX Pros are notable. They are legitimate glassed for early morning and late evening hunts. They were significantly brighter than my Swaro ATX. Now, when you add them up, you do have more objective, and you also have much more exit pupil. So they should be brighter, but it was nice to see that they were. My primary tripod setup was the Asiac Front Country paired with a Wiser Nighthawk. That's essentially my favorite setup right now. Like, I love that combo. It is the perfect combo unless you need to go hyper lightweight. And if that's the case, you go with the Asiac Backcountry paired with the Wiser. For digiscoping on that hunt, I used the All-In. It's going to be another couple weeks until I got a bit of a quick trip planned here, and it's going to interrupt some reviews. But I have 5 different digiscoping options I'm reviewing. I was almost ready to release this view, and then a brand new one came out that kind of addressed the main issue I had with the other 4, and I was like, I have to include this one. So I did. And so I kind of had to start back over. So another couple weeks, I'll have my digiscoping review out. But it's going to be a very good, very thorough review with 5 different options. I think I can really offer some solid advice on which one to get. For bow, I had my Prime RVX 34. I took 2 different broadheads, the Sevrs and the Iron Wills. Didn't end up, killing anything, so not much to talk about there. Don't need to get into my camera gear because that's really beyond the scope of what most of you care about. Some little odds and ends, some notables. I take a 3/4 length Thermarest Z-Lite pad that I've kind of cut up so I can fold it in half to sit on. I have my Steri pen, but didn't need to use it because I took a 20-liter big blue water jug and just filled up out of that every morning. I had my InReach phone. I had a large GSI Microlight coffee mug, which is one of my favorite things in the world. What else? Just took my little Ollie Camp stove. I was going to take my XGK, but I just didn't need it. I'm going to be taking that here in the next couple weeks somewhere. What else do we got going on here? Took the Peaks for my main headlamp. Still really like that a lot. Now, here's the other thing. I did put together a kind of recovery kit for my truck because I was going very deep. It was late season. There's a possibility a ton of snow. Ended up not being a ton of snow, so I didn't really need any of it. But here's what I put together. I had 2 different shovels. I had recovery kit with like a shackle and a snatch strap. I had 2 recovery boards, those like orange kind of bumpy boards you can put under your tires. I had a tire repair kit. I had both a compressor and a deflator because if you're in snow and you're having a problem with getting traction, you should way deflate your tires. And if you do that, you need a way to, reinflate them when you're done. I had a jump kit with me. I had an axe, a chainsaw, some basic tools, and some good chains for my tires. Now, I can only put chains on my rear tires because I have 35-inch tires in my truck, and I kind of have a little bit of rubbing in the front. I might get some just thin cable chains for the front for next year, just so I got them if I really, really need them. But I've got some like big-ass beefy V-bar chains for the back. Food was you've heard this all before, the food that I took. So I'm not going to dive into that. I think the notables for this would have been, the shelter sleep system with the hot tent. If that's something I don't normally cover, so that was good to cover that, so you know what I take. The power system was helpful. And I think the apparel system, taking the Stone Glacier ultralight long johns underneath those de Havilland light pants I was warm the whole time, never overheated. And then also using the heavyweight grid fleece as my base layer in that colder temperature. I just don't like feeling cramped and all too much fabric in the elbows and the armpits. So if you put a thin layer and then a thick layer and then you have 2 insulation layers over top, it's just too much. So I just skip the ultralight layer on the bottom. You don't get quite as good moisture migration from next to skin, but it works. It's totally fine. So that's essentially it for the mule deer list. Now let's go have a look at the whitetail list. So because I was staying in a hotel and because I was hiking in every morning, I'm not going to get into shelter. I'm not going to get into most of the stuff. I'm going to primarily focus on my apparel system for late season whitetail. And I'm going to come from the inside out. So I do own heated insoles. I did not use them on this hunt. It fluctuated from like -3 to +3. So it really no need. But I will say the coldest it got was about -3. And I'd say that would be the limit for sitting still. I was doing 10, 11-hour sits every day. Never came down out of the tree once. And so you're not moving your feet at all. And I think -3 is about the limit of where those Mindel Alpine Pro 200-gram boots can go before you need. Now for boots, I was running my Schnee's pack boots with 400 grams of Thinsulate insulation. And I'd say about -3 to -5. Let's use -5 for round numbers. -5 is about the limit of how -5 Celsius is about the limit of, which is probably about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, is about the limit of how cold you can go on a 10-hour sit without needing to heat your feet somehow, either with external insulation or some type of internal heating power. And that's normally when I run those heated insoles. So if it had been, predicted -10, I would have had my heated insoles in. And then on my base layer was the Numa heated core top and bottom. These things, I love these things. You can pulse these, and that's the other thing. When I use battery-powered heated clothes, I don't just turn them on and leave them on. I pulse them. And so you wait an hour or two, you start getting kind of cold, you pulse them on for 20 minutes, you shut them off, you wait another couple hours. You can do that 7 or 8 times during the day with 20-minute kind of hits. Like you probably get about 2.5 hours run time, maybe 3 hours total run time, with one battery for each. And you can always bring more batteries if you wanted more heat. But just pulsing that heat every now and then, it's amazing what it does for your psyche, for your outlook, for your, keeping you nice and warm and keeping you not shaking. I had a couple of big takeaways from this heated system that we're going to get into in a minute. Now, on top of that, I had my Fanatic bibs and I had my Fanatic jacket. I was wearing the same ball cap that I've been testing. And then I forget what it's called. It's the gigantic. It might just be the Fanatic beanie. It's a huge Berber fleece beanie from Sitka that I was wearing. And then I had the same glove system. I had the Stormfront gloves this time, liners, my Blizzard gloves, and the Merino liners, and my mechanic gloves as well. So let me talk about the apparel system in like two specific instances where it really paid off. So the first day, I was using a climber tree stand. And so it's kind of bulky, and I had my bow with me. So what I did was I strapped my bow to my pack, and I carried the climber in. Probably in hindsight, maybe I would have done it in reverse, but like this climber was gigantic. It was one of those big Cabela's ones. And it was like, I was at the truck, I had about a mile hike in. I'm like, it's just going to be easier to carry this thing. And I took one wrong turn on the way in. So probably walked a mile and a half-ish by the time I got to the stand. So I was like sweating my balls off by the time I got to the stand. So soaking wet, get to the tree, and it's like sideways wet snow at this point. Still pitch dark. Get to the tree, sun is just coming up. I've never actually used a climber before, but I watched some videos beforehand. Didn't seem like a rocket science. Had enough safety gear, had my harness. So got all roped in, got everything set up, and put the climber in, got the climber up the tree. I love a climber system. Let's just take a minute and talk about that. I hate tree stands. I'm not good with heights, but I like stand hunting. And being an archer, I'd rather be off the ground than on the ground in a blind. And for any of you out there like me who have problems with heights, get a climber. Even if you don't use the climber to get up in the tree, like you could still use sticks to get up in the tree and then just strap the climber on, which is, I think, the kind of the hybrid system I'm going to move towards, because some trees that I want to get into, you just can't use a climber. Dude, I feel so comfortable in that thing because it's got the bar around the top. It's got the nice big, plate to stand on. I prefer a recessed seat, like a mesh seat or a fabric seat. I don't like sitting up on top of a seat because I feel like I'm going to slide off to either side. And when the seat is like mesh or fabric that's stretched between kind of two side posts and your butt is down in between those two posts, I just feel way more secure in the tree. So yeah, that's what I did. Really liked the climber. Now, I get up in the climber, I get up in the tree. It's almost basically raining at this point. It's cold, I'm wet, and all my layers are wet. Now, I still had my ambient puffy because that was the other thing. I had the base layer is quite heavy, and so I just went base layer, Fanatic jacket, and then I also had the ambient puffy in my backpack. So I kind of muscled through the first couple hours, and I was just too cold. So it was kind of a pain in the ass because I had to get out of my harness and back into my harness. And eventually I got the ambient jacket or hoodie on in between the heated base layer and the Fanatic jacket. And that helped considerably. But even by then, the Fanatic jacket was soaking wet, and you don't really have any rain options. Like, you're not going to wear a rain jacket whitetail hunting. Like, as soon as you move, they're going to hear you a mile away. So it's like you just got to muscle through this cold, wet nonsense. But here's the deal. Because I had the heated base layers on, every time it got to the point where it's like, oh, this is just too much. Like, I can't. This is too much. I would just pulse those base layers for 20, 30 minutes. It would get all the shakes out. It would start to push some of that moisture out. And when it stopped raining around like 1:32 in the afternoon and it kind of broke for the rest of the day, within an hour and a half after that, my heated base layers had pushed enough moisture out that I was like reasonably comfortable again. And there's no way I would have been able to do that without the addition of like some type of external heating source. So Yeah, can't say enough good things about those heated tops and bottoms. The fit's a bit wonky and the fabric's a bit wonky. Like I wish I could just get like the Stone Glacier base layers with, heated, Kevlar or whatever it is woven right in there, but that's not an option. So you just kind of make do with the subpar fitment because of how powerful having an external heat source is. Now, the second major benefit, and this was a total shock to me of these heated layers, was so around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, finally some does start coming in. Now I can shoot a doe and a buck, and I see a group of does. They kind of surprised me at first, and they end up being 150 yards away. They were closer than that, and then they saw something, and it kind of spooked them. It wasn't me, but it was something. And so I'm basically standing in this stand, looking behind my tree, down into this draw, at 6 or 7 does that are just milling around, kind of waiting for them to slowly work back up towards the stand, which they were kind of doing. And I was already getting nervous is the wrong answer, like excited. I don't know. I was starting to get like the typewriter leg and stuff. Like there's deer right here. I'm jacked to kill a deer. And I started getting the typical, shakes. And I thought I'm going to turn on my base layers. I turned on my base layers and immediately my body started to relax. It was like, it totally makes sense. Like it's one of those like calming blankets they put on dogs, like those heavy heated blankets. And just putting that heat right into my muscles, because I think the shakes were a combination of me being cold and wet and the excitement of hopefully getting a chance to kill one of these deer. But I was like, oh, I'm doing this every time. Like as soon as I see a deer coming in, I'm going to turn on my heated base layers, because at the very least, they're going to shave off like 10, 15% of any shakes that I might get. And so that was just a great kind of additional bonus that I hadn't thought of. So around 2 o'clock, I'm able to get an arrow in a doe. She dies right in front of me, no problem. I still have a buck tag, so I stay in the stand. It's cold enough. The doe just lays there. I waited out until dark. Don't see any more bucks. I'll get into the broadhead testing and the results of that after. I had one more day to hunt, so I leave my climber attached to the tree at the bottom so I don't have to hike it in the next morning. Hike back out to the truck, just dragged the deer the whole way. I wanted a chance to butcher it whole, so it was just easier. No, I did not feel the need to like hump it over my shoulder and do some Cam Hanes-esque video footage. And I'm sorry to anybody who thinks that, and I like Cam. I think Cam is a great guy. I like what he stands for. I like the way he hunts. I have no issues with Cam, so I don't want anybody to think this is directed at Cam. But for anyone who thinks you look cool by taking an entire animal and putting it on your back and then walking out with it, you don't. You look like a moron. Everyone who's done that and posted it on Instagram, you all look like morons. So just stop it. It's completely it's one of these things that is so obviously unnecessary that you're doing it just for the attention. It's like, just stop, man. Anyways, bit of an aside. I literally just grabbed the legs and drag it out. I didn't even gut it at the location because I wanted to leave minimal scent around to disrupt it as little as possible for the next day. And I did have a couple deer come in right at last light, but they were like a couple 100 yards away. I think they might have been being chased by a coyote because they were like kind of sprinting around and doing really weird stuff. Anyways, I walk out to the truck, get to the truck, gut the deer, throw it in the back, go back to the hotel, ended up having dinner with a buddy. Yeah, done for the night. Go back in the next morning. Now, the difference now is I don't have to carry a climber, and I know the base layer and the Fanatic's not going to be enough. Also, it's not raining today. So instead, I go base layer, ambient hoodie, then Fanatic jacket, leave my bottom the exact same, and still don't take in heated insoles because I'm like, I can kind of muscle through whatever. And to be honest, that next day was a little bit colder, and I kind of wished I'd have taken them. But anyways, and I moderated my pace on my way into the stand. So I just took my time and showing up at that stand, not soaking in sweat, not being rained on, in the ambient in addition to the base layer and the Fanatic, that was the perfect system. That next day, it's like -3 all day, nice, clear, crisp. Some snow blew in around 10 and then some more around 2. But like I was very comfortable, able of sitting there all day, pulsed my, heated layers for 20 minutes, maybe every hour to hour and a half. Yeah, it was great. So Apparel worked phenomenally well. I would like to get a better tree stand backpack. My buddy Jake Downs, he really likes one of the Mystery Ranch ones, and he notes the limits of Mystery Ranch packs, but their whitetail line in particular he really likes, so maybe I'll go pick up that one. If anybody else has any packs that they like for whitetail stuff, let me know. I don't think there was anything else really noteworthy about any of the gear that I used. I have dumped the money on a really nice whitetail harness. It's like a couple $100. It fits really well. It's got lots of attachment points. I sunk the money into a couple of lineman ropes. So I have options. I got a nice bow rope. I've got a great rope for that safety rope that goes around the tree that you kind of walk up with you as you go. Buckles, really high-end carabiners. Yeah, I just did not screw around on my safety system, and I felt super secure up there. To be honest, when I shot the deer, it didn't even occur to me that I was standing in a tree stand. I felt very confident. So anyways, let's walk through the shooting of the deer and then kind of the results of the broadheads. So there was 2 or 3 does that were all within, shooting distance. The one had kind of blew at me a couple times and she was walking away. And then there was another doe who had a fawn with her. And I was able to get to full draw on the one doe. She was at 18 yards and she was walking. And I decided not to do any meh to stop her because they were all pretty wired. And I was worried she was just going to bolt if I said anything. So I shot her while she was walking. Shot was a little far back and a little bit high, but I got a pass through and it hit some spine. So paralyzed her back legs, but then she started kind of dragging herself forward with her front legs. When she rolled over on her side, and that was with the mechanical, the Sevr 1.5 hybrid titanium. When she rolled over on her side, I took an iron will and punched it through her breastbone and got a super clean pass through, like a hot knife through butter. And she expired immediately. So I don't know if I got hard or what I got on the way through with that second arrow, but she literally just dumped her head and died instantly. And then, like I say, I had to leave her there for the day, and then got her at night. So I didn't really have a chance to examine the damage. Now, the Sevr produced a shockingly large hole in comparison to the iron will and opened right up. The Sevr was a 1 3/4 inch diameter hole, even though there's 2.2 inches cutting surface on this. You have a 1.5 inch main blade on the Sevr, and then you have a 0.7 inch bleeder blade for 2.2 inches cutting surface total. And it just gaping wounds on either side of this animal, catastrophic blood loss, and it smashed an offside rib. And it didn't get a complete pass through. The fletchings kind of got stuck on the on side, but overall, devastating result from that broadhead. Now, the iron will had better penetration, didn't actually go through, actually went to the side of the breastbone and then to the side of the spine on the way out. So it didn't catch any bones with the iron will. But both holes with the iron wills just ended up being slits. You can look at this footage on my YouTube channel. Neither of them are really holes. The exit hole is a bit more of a hole, but the entrance hole, it literally sealed right back up. The muscle and the fat, by the time I hung it up in my garage, were just closed. And you could actually see both the main blade and the bleeder blade incisions through the tissue, but no hole to speak of. Whereas the mechanical was a legitimate hole. And so the performance of the blades themselves, the Sevr greatly outperformed the iron will. Now listen, just because I went through an onside or an offside rib on a small 100-pound whitetail doe, I'm not saying you're going to make it through the shoulder of an elk or something. I personally haven't experienced that. This is the first animal I've shot with a mechanical. I'm not going to make some claims that I can't back up with data, but it did break a bone and it still got a pass through, and the holes were devastatingly large. One of the issues was the next morning I tried to take out another mechanical, and I don't know why it got stuck in my quiver, but it did. I don't think it was frozen in there, but maybe. And by the time I got it out of my quiver, it had activated the mechanical, sliced the little elastic on there, and so it was useless. I couldn't shoot it that day. And I'd only brought 2 mechanicals and 3 iron wills. So I just put an iron will in my bow. Now, you can call that user error. You can call it wherever you want. But essentially, it's just trade-offs, because the Sevr performed better, without a doubt. I have no doubt that as long as you don't hit some catastrophic piece of bone, that Sevr is always going to give you a better hole than the iron will. I also think the iron will is always going to give you penetration, simply because it's got less cutting surface and it's sharper. And there's variables with the mechanicals. Like a fixed blade isn't going to get stuck in my quiver and then not work after I pull it out. And yes, maybe that was user error, but there's always going to be user error, potential for user error in moments of stress. So I can't honestly say I'm any closer to deciding what I want to use. I think my plan for 2025 is to carry mechanicals and fixed blades in my quiver. And then depending on the shot opportunity I have, I'll use the tool that's best for the job at that time. Like, I really think there's this trick in behavioral economics. Anytime you ask yourself a yes, no, either or question, it's called narrow framing. And instead of answering the question, you should expand the question. So if somebody asks you, are you going to use fixed blades or mechanicals? The correct response is like, well, why should I have to choose? You got a quiver with, I can put up to 7 arrows in my quiver. I could have 3 of one and 4 of the other, or 2 and 5, or whatever I want. I don't have to choose one or the other. I can choose both. So that's what I'm going to do moving forward. I'd also like to try these beast broadheads. A couple legit killers I know have really had good results with those. And I think that those in the Sevr seem to be pretty widely regarded as the best mechanicals on the market right now. So I think that's my plan for 2025. All right, let's wrap it up there. Any questions? I know today was a bit, like I said, I'm kind of under the weather, so I'm not as sharp mentally as I normally am. So I may have drifted there a couple times. I apologize for that. Any questions or follow-ups or additions to the stuff I shared today, hit me up, jay@mindfulhunter.com or mindful_hunter on Instagram. Quick reminder, anyone who joins Mindful Reviews between now and April 1st will be automatically entered to win a pair of Sig Sauer Zulu 10 15 power binoculars. They're phenomenal binoculars. I just reviewed them. I really like these binoculars. And you just go to mindful-reviews.com, pick a subscription, and Bob's your uncle. Yeah. Hope you're all having a great 2025 and look forward to all the kind of content to come and lining up everybody's hunts for the year. So, as always, thank you for tuning in.